orientation, you also have to respect mine, right? I am a straight man. I like my women who are born as women, who are assigned a female gender at birth and are comfortable in that female gender, right? That's who I'm attracted to, right? I'm not attracted to someone, physically attracted to someone who was, assigned a male at birth and has transitioned, right? It is what it is. There are a lot of people that are completely either just they're okay or they actively seek out transgender people. And again, I'm kind of speaking specifically male to female transition. I think that's like male to female transition is the one that's most noticeable. It's the same with like when it comes to gay people. People don't really look at a picture of two women kissing and immediately say, well, that's the problem, right? I mean, 90% of all these fucking fuckbags are jerking off to lesbian porn anyway. So like, it's usually not an issue when the person is or was born as a woman, right? There's a couple of reasons for that, right? A woman who wants to transition to a man, typically, at least in outwards appearance, right? If they begin hormone therapy, they'll always probably be a slender-built man, but you can quickly develop facial hair and lower your voice quite a bit. It seemed like the transition the other way is a lot harder. It's hard to reduce your frame, and most, there aren't like how do I word it right? Men can come built like a man or a woman, if to be completely like to be crude or blunt. But women typically don't come built like women or men, right? There are like thin-framed guys that I have seen several trans people who dead on they like I would not, if they had not confirmed that they were transgender, I probably would never know, right? But I've seen more of that with male or female to male transition. But again, there have been like there are a couple of people, and it's usually like people who are outspoken on YouTube that have said like whatever gender you've transitioned to, that's your gender, and everybody should appreciate that, and therefore, if a man goes on a date with you, you don't have to reveal to him that you're transgender. And if the night gets hot and heavy, you take him home, and again, especially if you're pre-op, the man, it's then, I don't know what they would consider it, but it's not exactly like it should be wrong, I guess, for the man to back out of the encounter because the woman, the trans woman is not like is still pre-op, right? Again, I think those people are in the large minority of transgender people. I think again, really at the end of the day, most transgender people just want to fucking be left alone, right? I think it takes a lot of a lot of balls, whether real or theoretical balls, to walk up to, especially again, people who are attracted to men, to walk up to a man that you don't necessarily know how they're going to react as another man or as a transgender female or male to female, and attempt to like engage in conversation or flirt with them or try to basically, when I say proposition, that doesn't mean asking for your hand in marriage, but to make it evident that you are interested in them, right? Because the reactions can go anywhere from mutual affection or mutual, an equal reaction to they fucking attack you, like people have been beaten up and killed for who they are. And that's, I think a lot of people, like there's always the concept, I just don't, I don't care what they do, I just don't want to push it in my face all the time. Why do they need a parade? We don't have a straight parade. That's like, because being straight, you've always been accepted. Like, it's always, it's the same with like the all lives matter shit. Well, why is it only black people? Holy fuck, buddy, keep her in the fucking road, Jesus Christ. Did you ever think about maybe not texting and driving? I won't get a response out of that either. But like, again, it's, oh, now he's fucking slowing right down. Maybe that's his response. He's gonna fucking run me off the road. But like I said, a lot of, yeah, it's a lot. Again, it's typically conservatives. You know, not all of them are religious conservatives, but a fair number of them are. But again, it's a lot of, you know, well, why do they have to have a fucking day or a parade? It's like, but you've never had to fight to be who you are. You've always just been allowed to be who you are. Like, you know what I mean? It's never been a struggle to fucking. You've never had to fight to be straight. You've never been oppressed because you're straight. You've never been beaten or killed because you're straight. Like, you know, white people have been beaten and killed for other reasons, but not typically because they're straight or fucking white. Like, you know, there are, yeah, you go to fucking Africa, fucking everybody kills everybody in Africa. And I hate to be so fucking blasé about it, but that's the way it is over there. Like, fucking people in Africa are fucking nuts. It doesn't matter what color you are, what fucking part of Africa you're from. You're probably super casual about fucking killing people because everybody there is fucking nuts. But like, you know, and again, in developed world nations, or, you know, again, if we're talking Eastern or Western Europe, like basically all of Europe and North America, like, you know, it really, and I mean, it should be the world, but it's not. It really, in this day and age, like, there is no, I don't know how to put it, you know, gay people, or no, the LGBT community is not sitting there, you know, wanting to just, hey, look at that, we're gay, we're, you know, we're gonna get you, you're gonna be gay too, we're gonna hit you with the gay virus. Like, it's not, like, a pride parade is not trying to fucking, like, taunt straight people or convince straight people to be gay. It's a celebration of, like, they get a chance to actually go out and just be openly gay in the fucking street. I don't necessarily think they should, like, you know, you get a lot of, like, the parades where people are running around naked and shit. That probably shouldn't be a thing. Like, you know, straight people aren't really doing that either. Probably, you know, like it or lump it, there will be children wandering around. I don't, you know, whether it doesn't matter what orientation the kid is, it probably shouldn't have a fucking wiener thrown in his face, or, you know, some chick's bugs fucking flopping around at him. Like, it just, you know, I think you should still, you know, wear something to cover the bits, right? You can get interesting in your clothing style or choices or outfits, but maybe, you know, keep the fucking goodies covered. You know what I mean? But it's also, again, that's not my parade to organize, and at the end of the day, like, yeah, if I don't want to see, you know, people in, like men, for example, in, like, I shouldn't even say if I don't want to see, like, if it's going to upset me, because I don't sit here wishing I could see men in, like, bondage gear or fucking half naked or naked, but I'm also, like, you know, if I came across a pride parade, I'm not going to be fucking mad about what I see, right? But if I actively did not want to see, you know, naked or partially naked, again, using men, for example, because I'm a man, it's on me, okay? The pride parade's this day. I'm not going downtown Toronto on the fucking pride parade day, because they're going to be out there doing their pride shit, right? Now, again, you get, well, if I'm going to be depressed, I can't go downtown. You can still go downtown and do what you got to do. You just might see a dick or two, like, it's up to you. But every other day of the year, we're allowed to tell gay people how fucking terrible they are. Or I should say we're allowed, like, we get away with it, right? And so it's, again, it's literally one, I mean, there's different days, because it depends on the city and stuff, but, like, using Toronto, again, as an example, it's one fucking day a year where gay people get to go out and be themselves, and for the most part, be relatively free of fucking reprisal. And there's always still, like, you know, Christian ministries and stuff that come out there and try to tell them homosexuality is a sin and repent before you die. And it's like, again, you know, could you imagine what would happen if, like, at, like, a pro-Christian, like, get together, whether it's a rally, protest, whatever, and a group of gay people came out there and said, you should all be gay, get rid of God, start sucking dick, like, there'd probably be violence, right? Like the response would be far worse than what the response is usually at a pride parade, where they just ignore the dissenters, I guess, for lack of a better word. So again, at the end of the day, it's just gay people want to get fucking married, let them get married. Like, I don't give a fuck, right? I'm not the guy that's getting fucking married. Like, what does it matter to me, right? And it's the same, like, you know, if one of my friends fucking came out as gay and, like, but, you know, we're at the wedding party, like, you fucking better believe the boys are still getting together to be the fucking groomsmen. Like, none of that changes. Absolutely none of it. Like, again, it's no, like, my dad and I had this big conversation the other day, because, like, I can't remember what brought the subject up, but there's something similar to this. It's like, you know, it's interesting. Like, I'll never know what it's like to come out to my parents, right? Because I am straight. I've never, like, even, you know, all my life I've questioned plenty of things about myself, but I've never questioned my sexual orientation. I've always been very comfortable as a straight male. Because I said, like, it would, you know, at 31 years old, like, if I were to come out tomorrow, it'd be weird. And he's like, no, it wouldn't be weird. I said, it would be, though. Because even if my entire family accepts me, there's still now there's a fundamental change in who I am, that for 31 years my family has not known or has not assumed about me, right? So, like I said, like, I can understand even that would be difficult, like, you know, and again, God forbid that they were to have, like, a negative response or reaction, right? I can understand why a lot of people have a hard time coming out to anyone, right? Especially their family. And so I got a lot of respect for people who do. But it's, you know, again, it's a case of, like, you know, my dad has oddly become a bit more tolerant over the years. I thought old age would make him more bitter and slightly more hateful. My dad has always been, like, mildly racist. And it's less. My dad argues the same thing that I've said before. It's typically not. It's not ethnicity. It's not skin color. It's culture. My dad stems from trucking. It's where, you know, even again, I used to, like, just think my dad was a bigot. But now that I'm a truck driver, like, I've noticed I start to fucking feel or think along the same lines. And it's wrong. But there is a case to be made. Like, the guy that on my camera fucking just about ate the ditch and swerved back the other way was an Indian guy, right? And again, you wouldn't have seen it on the camera because I wasn't turning the camera to him, which is also why he didn't have a CB, or why I expected him not to have a CB rating, right? There's a cultural divide between people from developing nations versus developed nations. And while there's plenty of other things you can see that cultural division in, I find like traffic or road laws tend to be the most prevalent and most noticeable thing, right? Again, one of my close friends is half Indian, right? His dad moved here from the Punjab province in India. And he goes back every couple of years. He says, I got to take a cab everywhere I go. I can't drive down there. I would never get anywhere. It's because down there, like, you don't obey traffic lights. There, half the places, there are no traffic lights. If there's in front, that's right away. It doesn't matter. If a guy starts passing you and he gets his hood just in front of yours and he wants to go right, you give it to him. Right? And it's the way it is over there. Right? And it works over there because everybody understands those rules. And so, if a guy gets partially around me and he puts his blinker on, I already know to let him in. And I don't get mad about it because that's what's expected. But in North America, that's not how the rules work. Right? Traffic lights are meant to be obeyed. Speed limits are meant to be obeyed. And they're enforced. Right? And the big one is things like merging and understanding, like interacting with other vehicles on the highway, right? I've had, I don't know how, I've lost count of how many times I've had an Indian truck driver pass me, and the second his hood clears my hood, his right blinker's on. And especially if we're going similarly close to the same speed, after a while he'll start kind of weaving into my lane a little bit. right? Or if we're neck and neck, he'll start waving at me and yelling at me. I can't hear him, but I'm assuming he's yelling at me to slow down or move over, right? Because again, he's come here from his country where I should be stopped. He expects me to let him in because that's the way it's always been for him. And when I don't, he's fucking mad about it. The issue is that nobody's sat any of these guys down and said, it is different here, right? If you do this, you are not going to get the response you want, and if you retaliate against that response, it's going to be you who goes to jail, right? I've never had somebody go to jail, but I've had guys, again, Indian truck drivers who have attempted to pass me as my lane ends, for example, because they know that I'm going to have to fucking slam on the brakes now. I had one in Kingston, Ontario. It's 3 lanes on the 401 in Kingston, and then it drops to 2 lanes at the top of the hill when you're coming out of town. And as soon as he hit the signs, that it was, I think it's a kilometer, 1,000 meters for some reason. They said 1,000 meters to the lane ends. He got out and started trying to pass me. And at the time, I was in a governed truck, so we're both doing 65. He's doing a little more than 65 east. And I ended up driving on the fucking shoulder, and he was still next to me. Like he was like his window was even with mine, and he just looked straight ahead and ignored me. And it's like after an entire kilometer, you had only managed to get next to my truck, right? So the only way for me to not be driving on the shoulder is to slow down, and that's what he expected. What he didn't expect is that my dad was there in front of me. So my dad was in front of him still. My dad immediately fucking slowed down, and we penalty boxed him and forced him to drive at about 30 miles an hour on a 50 mile an hour road, and kept pushing him onto the shoulder until eventually he pulled over, and we left him there because he was too fucking terrified of what was going on. Again, I hate to sound like a dick, but almost every negative road interaction I've had with another truck, or especially other trucks, has been with a visible minority. And again, it's almost always ended up being that they are somebody with an accent, and therefore was not born and raised in North America. And again, it's frustrating because it does venture into the realm of racism. It's easy. It is. I can see it would be very easy for somebody to say, well, okay, so you have bad traffic interaction with minorities, like you just hate minorities, and it's like, no, because outside of driving, I have really good interactions with visible minorities, right? I worked for an Indian guy. He was probably the most honest fucking dude I've ever worked for, right? The job did not work out because COVID has made it hard to keep a steady income going with a lot of different types of trucking. But he never lied, and he told us up front, like, the money isn't going to be phenomenal here. I know he thought there was going to be more coming in than there was. But, like, for example, like, he's the only place I know where I would ever lease operate a truck from, right? Because he's got 3 guys leasing trucks off of him. And because things are slow, he's just don't make the truck payment for a couple months. Keep working, but don't make the truck payment until things pick up. So now, again, there is the flip side. He's not, like, the trucks he's leasing are already paid for. He's already bought and paid for all of them, right? But, I just watched a video, Chasing Andrew Jackson posted it, where a guy, I think it was a car hauler, you can see there was a big rack around his truck. He missed payments. He was off work because of COVID, because he hurt himself. He was 4 years into a 5-year lease, and they had to pull over and confiscate the truck, get out of it now. Called the cops on him. He was literally, I don't know how he ended up at the company's yard in this argument in his truck, but they basically, from the sounds of things, again, it's a lease purchase, he got moved. He was over $300,000 into this truck, and I don't know how much a car rack costs, or a car hauling spec truck costs, but I think the whole thing was $368,000 or something like that. That's a lot of fucking money. That is way too much money for a lease purchase. If you were buying that truck outright, so it's always going to be yours, that's different. But they, after 4 years, right? Oh, you missed a payment, truck's ours. And they had the cops escort him out of the truck. Truck went into the shop, and he's standing in the fucking driveway with no ride home, no fucking money, most of his shit confiscated in the truck. And I said, all right, get the fuck off our property, go away. Right? And that is, I'm sure there's more to it. It sounded like he'd taken out a loan and some other shit. But you know, that's the most recent thing that's come out, and I saw it when I did the lease purchase, right? You know, when e-logs kicked in and I couldn't make it to California in the same amount of time, my dispatcher said, you're never going to the West Coast again. And I never went to the West Coast again. And I never made any money, right? With a lease purchase, you're putting all your eggs into one basket, and it is not you that carries the basket, right? You are literally, you know, I think somebody tried to use like a take it from the hand that feeds you analogy or something, but you're literally you're buying a piece of equipment off of the person that also pays you the money that you use to buy that piece of equipment. So if they decide to not pay you enough money to buy that piece of equipment, you can't afford that piece of equipment, and they turn around and say, well, you can't afford it. You're a fuck up, give us the truck back. Even though it's them that didn't give you money or give you work, right? So that's like lease purchasing never works. There are guys out there on YouTube, oh man, I leased this truck, I made it through Prime or whatever. Prime's not so bad, but most, especially guys that are leasing for companies that are not well known or not big carriers, which is weird, but yeah, they're the ones getting fucked around. Where my former boss, like I said, things are slow, still make a truck payment for a couple months. Still make your money. Like, we're still going to try to give you as much work as we can, but just don't make a truck payment for a couple months, right? Now, when I worked there, that was part of the problem, is I don't have that luxury because I bought this truck. So I'm paying the finance company, not my boss, right? But again, you're never going to find somebody who's more honest and fair with his employees. And it's an Indian guy, right? So again, it's outside of driving. And now again, he's pretty anglicized at this point. Like, his son's the fucking weapon behind the wheel, but he drives like slower and steadier than I do. And I got a lot of my longest driving job was tanker work, which kind of teaches you to be slow and steady. But a lot of, you said, there's a lot of guys that are not paying attention. You know, they got their feet on the dashboard, so they're not in a position to react if something happens. You know, they don't really know how to drive the truck because they haven't been actually taught how to drive the truck. Or they've been taught by somebody that teaches them enough to get the truck down the road without, like, what skips the level of experience required to have some confidence in what you do. So there's a lot of, sorry, I can tell this video's going on too long because I'm starting to yawn. There's a lot of problems, right? So maybe I'll talk about those problems in the next time on the Get Comfy Trucking show. And it'll, you know, I'm in the mood. It'll probably be a back-to-back thing. I'll just keep releasing the videos every day or as many days as I can, and we'll go from there. So this has been Get Comfy Trucking. You know, keep your stick on the ice.